Christians. We believe that the universe came into being suddenly, for sure.
That kind of goes back to what Rene Descartes said, though, right? Cogito ergo sum, right? I think, therefore I am. It's like I can deny everything else, but I can't deny myself.
Yeah.
Because I can't deny myself, there has to be something that created me. There has to be something that created that. And that's kind of evidence for God.
That's the ontological argument. I didn't cover that one today. Ontological means the argument of being. Because I am and I can imagine goodness and beauty and all these things, there has to be a standard that has created those things. That's what Pete's talking about. So, okay, let's look at the next one. I'm going to jump to the moral argument because I can do it a little quicker. This is really right and wrong. And right and wrong, believe it or not, people struggle with how do we know what right and wrong is. So I'm going to play a video. Again, it's a little long, but I think you'll understand. It's by a Christian group. If you know Christian apologist, William Lane Craig's group made this video. And
can you be good without God? Let's find out.
Absolutely astounding. There you have it. Undeniable proof that you can be good without believing in God. But wait, the question isn't, can you be good without believing in God? The question is, can you be good without God? See, here's the problem. If there is no God, what basis remains for objective good or bad, right or wrong? If God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. And here's why. Without some objective reference point, we have no way of saying that something is really up or down. God's nature provides an objective reference point for moral values. It's the standard against which all actions and decisions are measured. But if there's no God, there's no objective reference point. All we're left with is one person's viewpoint, which is no more valid than anyone else's viewpoint. This kind of morality is subjective, not objective. It's like a preference for strawberry ice cream. The preference is in the subject, not the object. So it doesn't apply to other people. In the same way, subjective morality applies only to the subject. It's not valid or binding for anyone else. So, in a world without God, there can be no evil and no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. God has expressed his moral nature to us as commands. These provide the basis for moral duties. For example, God's essential attribute of love is expressed in his command to love your neighbor as yourself. This command provides a foundation upon which we can affirm the objective goodness of generosity, self-sacrifice, and equality. And we can condemn as objectively evil greed, abuse, and discrimination. This raises a problem. Is something good just because God wills it, or does God will something because it is good? The answer is neither one. Rather, God wills something because he is good. God is the standard of moral values, just as a live musical performance is the standard for a high-fidelity recording.
Without your love.
The more a recording sounds like the original, the better it is. Likewise, the more closely a moral action conforms to God's nature, the better it is. But if atheism is true, there is no ultimate standard. So there will be no moral obligations or duties. Who or what lays such duties upon us? No one. Remember, for the atheist, humans are just accidents of nature, highly evolved animals. But animals have no moral obligations to one another. When a cat kills a mouse, it hasn't done anything morally wrong. The cat's just being a cat. If God doesn't exist, we should view human behavior in the same way. No action should be considered morally right or wrong. But the problem is, good and bad, right and wrong, do exist. Just as our sense experience convinces us that the physical world is objectively real, our moral experience convinces us that moral values are objectively real. Every time you say, "Hey, that's not fair, that's wrong, that's an injustice," You affirm your belief in the existence of objective morals. We're well aware that child abuse, racial discrimination, and terrorism are wrong for everybody, always. Is this just a personal preference or opinion? No. The man who says that it is morally acceptable to rape little children is just as mistaken as the man who says 2 + 2 = 5. What all this amounts to, then, is a moral argument for the existence of God. If God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. But objective moral values and duties do exist. Therefore, God exists. Atheism fails to provide a foundation for the moral reality every one of us experiences every day. In fact, the existence of objective morality points us directly to the existence of God.
Reasonable faith is William Lane Craig's ministry. He's got a lot of these little things that are really useful. So there are a lot of people going to say that right and wrong is not based on God, it's based on something else. And God is based on something else. And actually, one of the best arguments that was ever presented that I can think of was by Sam Harris. He was one of the new atheist groups in the early 2000s. And he wrote a book called The Moral Landscape. And he said, apparent morals are explained by what is best for human flourishing. Anybody know why this fails? This was compelling, and Christians were kind of stumped on this for a while.
Well, you have to decide what flourishing is.
Well,
what is best?
Well, it's whose opinion, right? In the end, a standard, if it's not God, has to be the opinion of someone. And he'll say, well, it has to do with culture and what causes a community to thrive. But okay, let's look at some options of human flourishing models we know of in some of our lifetimes, or at least in recent history. Do we want Adolf Hitler's version of human flourishing? He had one. It was the elimination of anybody that didn't fit his category. Or Joseph Stalin? We don't want that one. What about Mother Teresa? You might have a hesitation for a second, but she believed in redistribution of wealth, which is essentially going to stop everybody from working, and then there will be no wealth. So that version of human flourishing we already doesn't work. It's called socialism. So.
I got a question on that, because it's really not, I know we're different because we believe in God. We believe all decisions are based on what happens is He knows and He allows it. Because it was like when you went to Marvel with Thanos, he believed that to flourish, you have to wipe off half the universe, or you start overpopulate and you finish all the resources. So there's always going to be famine. There's always going to be something because God allows it, because we will destroy ourselves, and then so it's one of those, like, for us, we only go off with what the Bible says and allow Him to decide what's going on. For us, it's wrong. For God, maybe it was necessary for this to happen.
I think I always put it this way. You do not want my version of human flourishing. Because you know what my version of human flourishing? Which human is flourishing in my version?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's version of human flourishing is about themselves. It's called selfishness, because as humans, we're naturally selfish. There is only one human that has ever lived that was not self-centered. I'm not saying this is a picture of Jesus, although I can't remember what the girl's name is now. She painted it after a near-death experience. And there's actually been several others that have had other near-death experiences and painted almost exactly the same. Now, whether that's Jesus or not, my personal experience, I didn't see his face, so I don't know. I can't help you. But I like his standard, not the picture, but Jesus, because his was not selfish, because he could see the big picture because he is God. And that's the reason God gets to set the standard for right and wrong. And there has to be a standard. Even in Sam Harris's view, there had to be a standard. Someone had to choose what human flourishing looked like. And I'm going to go with God's model for that because I think he can see the full picture. So, and I like what C.S. Lewis said. C.S. Lewis says this: conscience reveals to us a moral law whose source cannot be found in the natural world, thus pointing us to a supernatural lawgiver. If there's a standard, and the standard is beyond the world, then that standard giver must be outside of the world, and we would call it God. Janet.
This is one of my favorite subjects because we're probably the only creature on earth that has an innate, inborn ability for all kinds of emotions. And we're born with the innate ability to know the difference of right and wrong. And a dog isn't. I mean, they're personable, but they're not born with that.
No, actually, your emotions are all evidences for God, actually, even beyond this, because other creatures don't have those things.
Especially the right and wrong.
Yeah, especially the right and wrong. Another quote, and I like Blaise Pascal, if you've listened to me very much, and he says this: vanity of science. Knowledge of the physical science will not console me for ignorance of morality in the time of affliction. Science can't help me when things go wrong. But knowledge of morality will always console me for ignorance of the physical science. Morality is the most important thing to get along with the people you're around. And if the society is doing morals according to God, my life is going to be a lot better. It doesn't really matter if I understand the science. And I think Blaise, being a scientist, really homes in. I like it because it's like, science is, we see what is observed, but we don't determine what is observed, right? The lawgiver actually determines that. So that was really quick through the moral argument. We could spend lots of hours talking about the different scenarios and going through the different cases. I tried to give you guys a little sample of what some of those arguments look like. This is very common for atheists to use this argument to their benefit. And the moral argument, the logical three-step argument that William Lane Craig shared in the video is a good way to go through that. It's like, if there really is true, absolute, objective, good and bad, there has to be a standard. And we say the standard is God. My answer to the atheist is, what's your standard? And then they're like, well, I don't have to have a standard, I just don't believe in your God. It's like, well, God? Yeah, I don't know that we care if you believe in God. I want to know what the standard is for good and bad. And they don't have one because you have to have a standard giver. Any questions? So I went really fast because I like the third argument the most because I'm a scientist. So we're going to look at the design argument of the universe. And this is just a little look, but I think the design argument is actually a series of arguments. You can see the finely tuned design of creation at every level of creation. It starts at the universe level, the full cosmos, then at the galactic level, then at the solar system level, then at our planet level, and then life itself. And then we can keep going to subatomics and even things that we can't make sense of. Every one of these levels shows incredible design and fine-tuning. Random processes don't get you to fine-tuned outcomes. Randomness causes randomness. So there has to be something behind this, and that's the design argument. And let's just look at the different levels real quick. This is a deep space picture from the James Webb telescope. And this is a deep space zoom. If you've never looked at one of these, go to space.com and check it out. My kids and I love looking at these things. I want you to notice, as they're zooming in, these lights are unknown distances away. They're still pinpoints. When you look at your neighbor's porch light, is it small or big? Well, light diffuses, right? The universe doesn't work the way we think it does. And scientists don't understand. Astrophysicists will tell you what we're seeing in these images, we cannot explain them. In fact, we now know that light has weight. It's affected by gravity. We can see light bending around galaxies. But look how beautiful that is. Can random processes create beauty? I mean, we know on Earth we can't do that. If I toss a whole bunch of stuff on the ground, it's probably not beauty. It might be modern art, but that's a different conversation. But the galaxies are so clear in these far field images. Only God can make it that way, because science sure can't predict it. And I think the way the galaxy is designed and the number of galaxies and where they're located, all relative to Earth, makes life on Earth possible. All those different fine-tuning elements. And then, I like this picture. All those are, this is a star. Anything that doesn't look like that is a galaxy in that picture. And it's more than you can count.
I don't like that. It boggles my mind on what's huge and what's minute. Because you got our sun is a tiny dwarf.
Oh yeah, I wish I had time to go through that.
Compared to, and it just boggles my mind.
I think it shows the capacity our God has to make something that the humans can never get completely fathom, to challenge the smartest among us and to keep pushing us. And the fact that as more we discover, the more we know we don't know. And I think that's amazing. And what I'm showing here on this chart is, as best we know, there's more than 50, we'll call them cosmological constants, that are finely tuned to a precise number in order for life to exist. And I'll just do the gravitational constant for today. The idea to understand what 10 to the 60 means, if you stretch a tape measure across the entire known universe, this is what J. Warren or Wallace's example, but you stretch a tape measure across the entire known universe, the sensitivity of 10 to the 60 is like 1 inch on that tape measure that's untold distances. It's very, very precise. And give you an idea what, well, does anybody know what 10 to the 60 looks like as a number? I'll just show it to you. It's fun. 10 to the 60, ready? And that's the precision of the number. Okay, so you think it's really 1 over that number is how precise that number has to be in order for gravity to work the way it does. If this number was off by a factor of 1 in the 60th, we would either all smash together or all fly apart. And our planets would not be able to hold together and life would not be possible. So that's the reason it's so important. And again, it's one of more than 50 that has been identified by astrophysicists. Atheist astrophysicists accept this. They just try not to think about what that means. So at the universe level, the level of design is amazing. And like I said, you can talk about this for hours, and you'll talk about a different thing and how it affects the different ways that we here on this planet interact with the entire universe. Astrophysicists know that now, which makes it, I liked what Krauss was saying about, the more we learn about science, the more amazing the universe is. Yeah, and that really tells us how amazing the creator of it is, because the science can't explain it. And the more that we can't explain, the more there's only one logical explanation. Level. Our galaxy is a spiral galaxy like this one. This is that AH131 or something like that. But this is pretty much what the Milky Way is thought to look like. And this is an artist's conception of what the Milky Way, you can see where our sun is down here. In order for us to have life here on Earth, the sun has to be exactly where it is. It has to be in the right arm, at the right distance from the center, moving at the right speed. It has to have the right size and strength of stars around us for life to be possible here. That all factors in. Yeah, it's called the Goldilocks zone. I was just about to say that. I mean, science has proven this. Atheists, astrophysicists will say, yes, it's a Goldilocks zone. And they actually search for these in the galaxy, and they'll make up the fact they found some, but real science, I have not seen any evidence that they found anything like the location of our sun in our galaxy. You can't see other galaxies, or at least not into them. You can only see them as pinpoints. So at the galactic level, the Goldilocks zone is very small, and that's where our planet happens to be. And I think it's by design. It's very finely tuned. It's a perfect design for what God has created us, right? So let's look at the solar system. And the solar system I find amazing. I always loved astronomy as a kid. And this picture is not to scale. I was trying to get everything on so I can talk about it. But the solar system is set up amazingly. We have the 4 gas giants on the outside. They're like cosmic vacuum cleaners. They suck up everything because they're huge gravity relative to everything else around it. So almost no cosmic debris makes it inside the gas giants. And then we have these asteroid belts, there's radiation belts, all effectively shielding us from the universe. And then Earth is inside that last shield, and it also has other rock planets which help our gravity. You know, our orbit is not a circle, it's an ellipse. We need it to have seasons and all the things that are necessary for life, because it would either be too cold or too hot if it wasn't for that. So our solar system is designed perfectly. Even the comets, even Pluto and all the other minor, what they call dwarf planets. I hate it that they took Pluto off the list, but every one of the objects in our solar system contributes to how our planet circles the sun, the rate, and our seasons, and all the things that are important for life. So at the solar system level, we often refer to what they call the habitable zone. Where in our solar system could life exist? And if you notice, it's only Earth. Now they've tried to stretch it to Mars, but no scientist that actually is just looking at the data will admit that that's possible. It's just too cold. You can't get enough water to maintain and all those kind of things. So Earth is in the exact perfect place for life to exist. And as Christians, we believe that's part of the finely tuned design of the universe that points to a designer instead of random chance. And there's a lot of other factors we could talk about, but again, I'm just trying to give you a couple of the high ones, and I'm running slow. Earth, our planet is amazing, and I don't think we always respect how beautiful it is. This is a picture from the International Space Station. And there we are, we're somewhere in there. It's beautiful, but we don't always think about how precisely it's designed. The tilt of the axis is exactly what it needs to be. The speed at which we rotate, the size of the moon, the distance the moon is from the Earth, how fast it rotates around the Earth, and how quickly we go around the sun. All those things contribute to us having a livable environment here on Earth. And that doesn't even start to talk about what our atmosphere is. Our atmosphere is exactly the right composition of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and methane. But we use oxygen up. But plants use carbon dioxide in perfect equilibrium. How is that even possible? And in fact, I think I'll tell you a story even if I don't have time. During COVID, there were a lot of climate scientists always talking about, you know, our effect on the planet and all this stuff. And I read an article, they don't know what they were publishing, but I'll share it with them now that I'm going to put it on the internet. They said that during COVID, the CO2 emissions went way down because the humans weren't participating in the greenhouse gas production. But greenhouse gases, methane is the most abundant greenhouse gas. And during COVID, when CO2 emissions were down, you know what happened to methane emissions? They went up. The Earth kept a perfect equilibrium. They don't understand. It's like, how is this possible? All this methane's coming from the wetlands. Well, God knows what he's doing. And it showed that humans don't have a lot of impact on that, frankly. Even the Earth's crust, what the composition of the Earth crust is all important for us to be able to live, right?
You know, another thing about that is whenever they talk about increased amounts of CO2 in the environment, it's like, well, the last time, according to paleontologists, right, that we had increased CO2 in the environment, we had massive animals and massive plants, right? Because whenever you look at the dinosaurs, supposedly they breathed a very different atmosphere than we did. It had much higher amounts of CO2. So wouldn't it be good if we had more CO2 in the air, thus having larger plants?
Yeah, they can't decide which way they want to go, because another paleontologist said they had to have higher concentrations of oxygen. So, okay, which one's right? You're looking at the same data. It's all theory because it's not. Well, yeah, I know. I've built a lot of models in my life, and frankly, I've been wrong a lot.
Now we're heading toward, global warming. They can't make up their mind.
Well,
And they tend to forget that, the planet was once covered with ice. What they say about underwater.
what I always think is funny about the climate change argument, we call it the climate change argument because they're always changing their mind. But if you look back in history and you know the history that they present in paleontology, they talk about ice ages and warm periods. So the climate hasn't been changing over your billions of years, and you're worried about a quarter degree 25 years? And guess what? It's been really cold here in the last few years, so I want to know where the global warming is, personally.
I always tell them, I say, well, wouldn't it be good if we were warmer? And they're like, no. And I'm like, most people in the world are freezing and they can't grow any food. They would like to, in Siberia, have it a few degrees warmer. They would love that.
Yeah, so it's theories. But what you see with the theories is the evidence. When you just follow the evidence, you put it on your scale, God's the only reasonable explanation for the way the planet works. And as we scale out. Go ahead, Pete.
I was going to say, well, with these models, people bring them up all the time. What is it we say whenever we build a model? R squared does not explain predictability. It explains how much the data fits the model. So it's like, in reality, even if the data fits the model, it doesn't mean that it's right. It just means that when we're looking at it right now, it appears to be right. So people will throw these like, well, there's this model that tells you this and this and that. And it's like, we've had models that we have to change all the time. Like, it explains something for a brief period. But like you said, if the climate is changing, right, obviously the data is going to change. We know that in the 1800s, we had a brief ice age, right? Because we saw famines, we had recorded lower temperatures. So obviously you're going to see these changes as time goes on.
So, okay, let me jump. So talking about the models, this is an extra story. I used to do research for NASA when I was in graduate school, and I made models. I was actually helping them try to get the Galileo space program, or the probe, working again. I was modeling how fast I had to move the magnetic tape so it wouldn't damage itself. And every time it went about 30 days, we had to redo the model because we didn't have a complete information. And so models are just models, okay? It's the best we can do. And most of mine were wrong. I did the best I could. And I'm not going to have time to do it justice because we're running a little slow tonight, but life is one you have to look at. And this is what Darwin thought the building blocks of life looked like. When he wrote The Origin of the Species, this is what they thought cells looked like. Just sacs of cytoplasm, nothing very exciting. And he said, if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ exists that could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, then my theory would absolutely break down. And he said, in fairness to Darwin, he said, I don't know of any, right? Because that's what his science was. This is what a cell looks like, and this is a simplified drawing. You take any one of those components away from the cell dies. It can't replicate, it can't make anything. It needs all of those things in order to operate the way it does. And some will say, well, plant cells are even simpler. That's what the structure, and plus it can produce its own energy from the sun. And we know this from high school biology, right? High school, anybody taking high school biology yet? You got consumers and producers, right? Photosynthesis makes energy that consumers can use, but there's not a real good evolutionary reason why we stopped being producers and began to be dependent on other creatures for our existence. And there's a lot of different things that we could talk about, but the photosynthesis cycle of a plant is amazing. The fact it can take in carbon dioxide and then produce oxygen that we can breathe, uses water and nutrients from the soil, and it is so efficient. We have not been able to design any human-made processes that even come close to the efficiency in a plant. And the atheist thinks it happened by random chance, yet all the brightest people in the world can't come up with anything even
I
close.
think that takes a greater belief than belief.
It becomes a faith issue, right?
Intelligent design. It's intelligent design, and there's only one thing that can describe intelligent design, and that's God. Like if you know about the bacterial flagellum,
What?
one of the building blocks of life, and if any one piece of that,
It's my
like
next one.
motor. Yeah.
Don't steal my thunder. This is a bacteria. And prokaryotic cells are not simple, no matter what the scientist wants to tell you. They have a lot of very intricate parts, like the flagellum. Patrick, you want to teach this part?
Any part of the linkage is missing.
Every one of these proteins are unique, and it's essentially a rotary motor. It's more sophisticated than any motor that any human has made yet. It's completely biological. It looks more, if you see it actually under a microscope, it's like, this is just amazing. And they'll say, well, this grew over time and blah, blah, blah. It's not the only one of these in the bacteria. This is just one other example. There's this little injection thing. It looks similar in this picture, but all the go into making each one of these are completely different. They're not part of the other one. And if you take any one of those proteins away, that thing does not work. It cannot be partial, and evolution would say if it didn't work, it would not have stuck in the evolutionary chain. They can't get past the fact it can't take one minor step. If it's not functional, evolution would toss it out. You take anything out of this, it's not functional. Okay, I gotta go quick since I don't have much time. DNA. We could spend several nights talking about DNA. DNA is amazing. It's amazing complex. I'll just let Bill Gates talk about it. Bill Gates says DNA is like a computer program, but far more advanced than any software that has ever been created by orders of magnitude. There's data compression in DNA, overlapping messages. We don't understand. There's error correction. It's more sophisticated than anything that we possibly have. And DNA is actually just part of the story. We always talk, oh, DNA, everybody talks about that, but all these little that are not contained in the DNA, or at least we don't think it is. The layers upon layers of information is amazing. It's so intricate. And DNA is like 5 billion characters long in humans. I mean, that's a big message. I don't think I write, but I can't write that much. You'd be writing for years. So okay, that's life. Now, I got a few more minutes, so I'll talk about subatomics. I'm a chemical engineer. I also did inorganic, quantum physics, and all those kind of things when I was in school, and I love the subatomics. This is just a carbon atom, nothing terribly sophisticated, but does anybody know why there's a nucleus and electrons? How does positively charged things stick together? If you do magnets, you know that doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a strong nuclear force and a weak nuclear force. We have no idea why, but there's a force. It's finely tuned to just be precisely what it needs to so the atom can stick together. But did you know that's not the smallest building block that we know of? Quarks. Quarks. But do you know there's more quarks than there are electrons, neutrons, and protons? As it gets smaller, it actually gets more complex. In Darwin's vision of evolution, the smaller it gets, the more simple it gets, because it has to have a fundamental building block. What we have seen in science is as we get smaller and smaller, it gets more complex. And I haven't even talked about things like photons. Why can a photon be separated into its different colors? Surely somebody got science, right? It's wavelengths, right? But why? I mean, why? Think about there's a design to even a beam of light that's not, you can't explain why it looks like it does. And that's not the end of it. What about things that get smaller, like microwaves and gamma rays? Highly designed. We don't completely understand why or how. We can just observe and try to predict how it works. But do you know there's things even smaller? Now, these are imaginary things, like the tachyon you hear about, or neutrinos, or string theory, or dark matter, dark energy. If these are true, and I'm not saying they are, it would be more complex than anything that we've discovered so far. And in fact, when Krauss was talking about the space has mass, he's talking about the dark matter theory. We don't know why. So they have to make up something that you can't see. But we don't have to make up something we can't see. What is the thing that holds the universe together that we can't see? God. They say, I don't know. And I say, well, okay, which one of us actually has an explanation? The Christian. I can put my explanation of I know versus theirs, I have no idea. And guess what? They got nothing to put on the other side of the scale. So that was quick. Trying to finish on time. I like this quote, and I think it summarizes kind of everything that we talked about. Robert Jostow was one of the founding, well, I guess he's kind of one of the founding people of the Goddard Space Institute, and became a Christian through his astrophysicist. And this is in, I can't think what the name of the book is now. Did I write it down? I didn't write it down. God's Astronomer, I think is the name of the book. And he said, for a scientist who's lived his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He's scaled the mountains of ignorance. He's about to conquer the highest peak, and as he pulls himself over the last rock, he's greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. The concept is that as I try to learn more and more and more, there becomes only one answer. And it's the answer the theologian already knew. Theologian being studier of God. So, oops. So I'll end here. Our arguments, the reason I chose these. The cosmological argument, or the beginning, proves that the beginning of the universe had to be by something that was immaterial, something outside of matter, something that's timeless, something that's spaceless, something can't be part of the universe to make the universe. And it has to be extremely powerful to make something from nothing. Unlike Lawrence Krauss, who just invents a new version of nothing, God actually had to make something from nothing, right? And then the design argument shows that the creator, whatever that first cause was, had to be extremely intelligent to make it so finely designed, so finely tuned. And then he sustains his creation. That's that idea that there's something holding the universe together we don't know. They try to call dark matter dark energy. I call it light energy. It's called God. And then the moral argument says that the first cause has to be perfectly moral, to be the standard of morality, which makes him personal. And if you use just these three arguments, you can see that the God of the Bible's fingerprints are all over creation. In every level that we look at, if we weigh the evidence without presupposition, I don't know doesn't work. Okay, you have to actually follow where the evidence goes. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, you know, given how we view these in modern times, I think of the book of Job, and God's talking to Job and say, where were you when I created the depths of the water and placed the stars in the sky? And, you know, can you explain that to me, how all that happened? I mean, it's basically the same argument.
It is. That's the reason I love the book of Job so much, because we have to answer the question if we're going to challenge God. And thinking God doesn't exist is a challenge to God. It really is. Atheism is a challenge. I'll say, I don't think there's any evidence that could convince me. The evidence and see where it works. And as Christians, we are willing to do that. We're willing to look at the evidence and let the evidence lead us, because we know it always ends at the foot of the cross.
Well, that's kind of the story of Jacob too, right? Why he got renamed Israel was that he wrestled with God. And that was what proved that, like, he had that capability to bring forth the 12 tribes. I think as Christians, that's something for us to remember too, is, you know, it's not blind belief, right? It's that we have to wrestle with God. We have to try to push ourselves to be greater Christians every single day, right? And like, to do that, we have to question our own motivations. We have to question our own beliefs, so that way we don't fall upon something that's false.
No,
we don't like just follow tradition that may lead us astray from, you know, what it is that he really wants. Because somebody could tell us something from the Bible, and like you say all the time, misattribute it, right?
Very true. So I don't want to cut us off, but I want to stay to our schedule. And this is really just a sampler. We could go into a lot more depth on this. But what I want you to take away from this is when people have doubts or misconceptions about God, there is a plethora of evidence to share with them. And they may have arguments against these. Go ahead, let's lay it on the table. Eventually you'll get to one that they don't know how to answer. And that's the approach. It's like, okay, we'll put that one aside. Let's look at another one. And then show me, which ones do you have that disprove God? I love that one. The atheist doesn't like that very much because it's like, well, I just haven't seen enough evidence. Okay, well, so you need to read more.
The fact we're talking about him, whether he exists or not, gives you the proof that he exists.
Yeah, well, and the fact that you don't believe it does not change whether he exists or not. Right. And that's the reality. All right. Scooter, would you pray us out today? Sorry, I looked right at you.
Thank you, Holy Father, for having us here this evening, this wonderful food, this gathering. Kip teaching us your whole wonderful life, world that we live in is made absolutely perfect by you, that cannot be done by any other means, any other way. You make a perfect world for us to live in. Thank you so much for everything you've done for us. We pray. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
And I want to say thank you for everybody that's been bringing food. It's turned our Wednesday nights into so much fun. I really appreciate it, and participation has been great, and I look forward to the next step. So we're going to have a facility meeting now. Now, facilities. We're going to have a business meeting and a fellowship meal on Sunday. That's all right. Thank you.